In February 2026, Johns Hopkins Medicine published results from one of the longest cognitive health studies ever conducted. Researchers followed adults aged 65 and older for 20 years, and what they found changed the way scientists think about dementia prevention. A group of participants completed a specific brain training program, just 5 to 6 weeks long, with a few follow-up booster sessions. Nothing dramatic, nothing expensive. A structured exercise that sharpened how quickly their brains processed visual information. And 20 years later, that group had a 25% lower risk of developing dementia compared to those who received no training. 25% lower risk from 5 weeks of training 2 decades earlier. This is not a small finding. This is one of the most significant results in dementia prevention research in years, and it raises a question that I want to answer for you today. What exactly is this type of brain training? Why does it work so powerfully? And what can you do right now to get those same benefits? My name is Dr. Elena, and every week I bring you practical, science-based information on cognitive health and memory for people over 60. Subscribe if you haven't already, because today's video may be one of the most genuinely hopeful ones I have made on this channel. Before we get into the specific training, I want to give you the context that makes this result so significant, because it is not just about one study. It is about a fundamental shift in how scientists understand the aging brain. For many years, the dominant view of cognitive aging was essentially pessimistic. The brain peaks in early adulthood, declines gradually, and there is relatively little an individual can do to change the trajectory. Genetics, they thought, determined most of what would happen. Lifestyle was a secondary factor at best. That picture has been dismantled piece by piece by research over the past 2 decades. We now know that the brain retains a remarkable capacity for change, what neuroscientists call neuroplasticity, well into the 70s, 80s, and beyond. We know that specific activities can strengthen specific neural pathways. We know that cognitive reserve, the brain's resilience against damage, can be built over a lifetime through deliberate mental engagement. And we know, now more clearly than ever, that the window for building that protection is not closed after 60. It is still open. And it responds to the right kind of challenge. The study I mentioned, called the ACTIVE trial, conducted across 6 major American research institutions, tested 3 different types of cognitive training: memory training, reasoning training, and speed of processing training. The last one, speed of processing, was the only intervention that showed a statistically significant reduction in dementia risk 20 years later. So what exactly is speed of processing training, and why is it so protective? Speed of processing refers to how quickly the brain can receive, interpret, and act on incoming information. It is one of the cognitive functions that begins to slow earliest with aging, often before people notice memory changes. When visual information arrives, a face, a sign, a moving object, a younger brain processes it quickly and automatically. An aging brain processes the same information more slowly, requiring more effort and more time to reach the same result. This slowdown has cascading effects. When the brain has to work harder to process basic incoming information, it has fewer cognitive resources available for higher functions: memory formation, reasoning, attention management. It is like a computer processor running at reduced speed. Everything downstream slows down too. The speed of processing training used in the active trial works by presenting visual targets on a screen and asking participants to identify objects at the center while also noticing information at the periphery of their visual field, all under time pressure that gradually increases as performance improves. The brain is forced to become more efficient at rapid visual processing. And what the study showed is that this efficiency improvement has profound downstream effects on cognitive resilience that last for decades. The biological reason this works so well connects to something called the useful field of view, the area from which a person can extract visual information in a single glance without moving the eyes. As we age, this field tends to narrow, meaning the brain processes less information per second from the environment. Restoring and expanding this field through training appears to strengthen neural networks involved in attention and memory in ways that are deeply protective against the kind of cognitive decline that leads to dementia. But here is what I want you to understand clearly. The principle behind this training is far broader than one specific exercise done on a computer screen. The core mechanism, challenging the brain to process information more quickly and more efficiently under conditions that gradually increase in difficulty, can be engaged through multiple activities that are accessible to everyone. Let me explain how. The first approach is any activity that requires rapid visual scanning and decision-making. Card games played at a competitive pace, where you must identify matches, sequences, or patterns quickly, engage exactly this cognitive system. The classic game of set, for example, requires scanning multiple cards simultaneously and identifying pattern matches under time pressure. Regular crossword puzzles done against a clock rather than at leisure. Word-finding games. Any activity that involves rapidly interpreting visual information and responding accurately engages speed of processing in ways consistent with the research. The second approach is learning a new physical skill that requires visual motor coordination. Activities where the eyes and hands must work together rapidly and accurately. Table tennis is particularly well studied for this reason. It requires processing fast-moving visual information, predicting trajectories, and generating rapid motor responses, all simultaneously. The same principles apply to pickleball, badminton, and even juggling. The activity forces the brain's visual processing system to work at the edge of its capacity, which is precisely the condition under which it strengthens. The third approach is learning to drive in new environments, or, as a passenger, actively tracking multiple elements of traffic simultaneously, practicing the mental habit of scanning broadly and rapidly rather than narrowly focusing on one object at a time. This deliberately engages the peripheral visual attention that the active training targeted. The fourth approach is any form of rapid reading practice, training yourself to read faster while maintaining comprehension. Reading faster requires the brain to process written information more quickly, expanding the amount of text processed per fixation and strengthening the neural pathways involved in rapid information extraction. The fifth approach, and this one is specifically supported by the active trial structure, is using a computerized speed of processing program. Several validated programs based on the active trial methodology are available online and through cognitive training platforms. While I cannot recommend specific commercial products, I encourage you to search for programs based on the active trial or useful field of view training. These are the versions with the most rigorous scientific backing. Now I want to address something that many people wonder about when they hear this research. Does it matter when you start? If someone is already in their late 60s or 70s, is the window still open? The answer from the research is clear and encouraging. The participants in the active trial were 65 and older at the time of training. The benefit was seen across the age range of the study. The brain at 65, at 70, at 75 retains sufficient neuroplasticity to respond to this kind of challenge in ways that are cognitively protective. Starting earlier is better, but starting now is far better than not starting at all. Every week of consistent cognitive challenge contributes to the cognitive reserve that protects against dementia. There is no age at which that contribution becomes meaningless. There is also an important point about consistency versus intensity. The active trial training was relatively brief, 5 to 6 weeks of sessions with booster sessions every few years. It was not an overwhelming daily commitment. What mattered was the quality of the challenge during the sessions, not the total hours accumulated. This suggests that even a few sessions per week of genuinely demanding visual cognitive training can produce meaningful protective effects over time. The key word is demanding. Activities that push the brain slightly beyond its comfort zone, not activities that feel easy and automatic. Let me bring it all together. A 20-year study published in February 2026 by Johns Hopkins Medicine found that just 5 to 6 weeks of speed of processing brain training reduced dementia risk by 25% over 2 decades. Making it the only cognitive intervention in the trial to show such a lasting protective effect. Speed of processing, how quickly the brain interprets and acts on visual information, is one of the first cognitive functions to slow with aging, and training it appears to build lasting cognitive resilience through mechanisms that protect against dementia far into the future. The 5 ways to engage this cognitive system in daily life. Rapid visual pattern games like card games and timed puzzles. Physical activities requiring visual motor coordination like table tennis or pickleball. Active visual scanning practice as a driver or attentive passenger. Rapid reading practice with maintained comprehension. And validated computerized speed of processing programs based on the active trial methodology. The brain at 65, 70, or 75 is not done growing. It is not done strengthening. And 5 weeks of the right kind of challenge may protect it for 20 years. That is not a small thing. That is one of the most hopeful findings in cognitive health science, and it is available to you starting today. If this video gave you something genuinely useful and hopeful, please share it. Subscribe to the channel for a new video every week on memory and brain health after 60. And leave me a comment. Which of these 5 approaches do you think you could start this week? I read every single comment. See you in the next video.